PS4 Remote Play comes to PC, Nintendo announces SNES re-releases for the 3DS, plus the HTC Vive and Microsoft HoloLens pre-orders challenge the VR throne. All that plus more today, Tuesday, March 8th, 2016. You're listening to the 1P versus 2P podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host Ryan Ray. Let's get started with
First Attack.
Let's begin with our top story. The PS4 is finally getting features it should have had for years. I definitely agree with that headline from Kotaku. This is about the latest firmware update, which is going to be in beta now. It's 3.50, but the final release for this latest update is yet to be announced by Sony. But let's run through some of the features they're going to be adding. We're talking about the ability to peer offline while on PSN, letting you turn on notifications when your friends come online. That's a huge plus. And then this is the major one, which we teased up at the top. Sony is saying that they're planning on bringing remote play to PC and Mac, although we're not sure how that's going to work out and when it's going to come. But personally, I'm pretty excited that that feature is coming along. Ryan, read the rest of these features that we're expecting.
Yes, you're also going to have the ability to schedule a future gameplay session with your friends on the system. Basically, that's going to work like a Google Calendar invite or an Outlook invite. Basically, you're going to be able to pre-register people for a gaming event and then all get together and play at the same time. It'll notify you on the system level to add you to a party right away when the event starts. And that's pretty much how that's going to work. They're also going to be adding daily motion live streaming. As you know, PSN already allows you to stream to Twitch and to Ustream, and Dailymotion is another one of these streaming services they're going to add. They're adding a lot of features to this update.
Yeah, I absolutely think these kinds of things are necessary, although there's one blatant omission that people have really been clamoring for a long time from Sony, and that's the ability to change your username, because if you look at like Xbox Live, I know, Ryan, you went through this a while back. You might have some terrible name you came up with a long time ago, or you have noticed that someone online has a similar name and you just want to change your own, or your account got hacked or whatever. Whatever the case may be, whatever the reason, you should be able to at least change your ID online. And Sony has resisted making that change. But I have to say, the rest of these features that we're expecting, we don't know when exactly they're going to be coming. Right now, like I said, they're going to be in beta. To keep up with the features that Xbox keeps rolling out, like remote play, that was huge. And now I'm very excited because I live in a home with a shared TV, and the PS4 is permanently plugged in to my entertainment center. And sometimes, my wife will be watching a show or whatever, and I just want to go on my PS4 and play whatever. And having that ability to walk over to my PC and the ability to do that is excellent in my opinion. But I've also tried the Vita Remote Play, which isn't supported with every title. And personally, I thought that worked out pretty well, but I would love to have it, be able to stream on a bigger monitor to play some of these bigger games. What about you?
Color me skeptical. Remote play has never really worked for me. If your internet situation is such that you live in an apartment building and your internet might be kind of dicey, the remote play has just never really worked out that well for me, even on a very stable connection. I'm interested to see how they will figure out the known lag issues they've had on this feature. For sure, you're not going to be able to play rhythm games, which, to be fair, there aren't that many on PS4 and Vita. But it's a really interesting move. As we kind of move away from consoles and kind of shift towards more people playing games on their PC. Definitely a good move for Sony. Some of these features, like the ability to peer offline, Xbox Live has had for years, since the 360. This is Sony basically catching up. My understanding with the way Sony built their database and not being able to change your user ID, all that stuff was kind of implemented with the PS3, and all that account level stuff is basically the same as it's worked as it has on PS3. And unfortunately, that was a really bad architecture. The PS3 was really hard to develop for, and PSN still is that built on that same backbone. So until they figure out the kind of technical hurdles with that kind of stuff, expect a lot of the still kind of PSN hitching that has plagued the system for quite some time.
Plus the several outages and hacks that Sony has gone through on PSN, I feel like they still need to catch up and build up all that goodwill for over the past years, going back to the PS3. I think now they're really starting to embrace the online multiplayer community, where Xbox definitely won that in the last generation. And now we're seeing that manifest in a lot of these features that they keep teasing and announcing. So kudos to them. Very excited to check out those features when they come out. Let's move on to Microsoft. And let's talk about Phil Spencer. He's the head of the Xbox division over at Microsoft. And in a speech to reporters, and this was to the press only, this wasn't really a prepared statement meant for the public per se, but it was rather interesting. A lot of outlets reported this anyway. Basically, he wanted to talk about the concerns that a lot of Xbox One owners brought up, that a lot of the console exclusives, like, for example, Quantum Break recently, that were only meant for the Xbox One, are now starting to appear on the PC. And there's this little bit of backlash because they feel like it's eroding the value of just owning the Xbox One. They feel like, why didn't we invest in a high-end PC instead if these games can be played on there and they're not just console exclusives like we were led to believe by Microsoft before? So let me read you a quote that he said. He said, quote, "We see on other platforms, whether it be mobile or PC, that you get a continuous innovation that you rarely see on console. Consoles lock the hardware and the software platforms together at the beginning of the generation. Then you ride the generation out for 7 or so years while other ecosystems are getting better, faster, stronger. And then you wait for the next big step function." End quote. Ryan, what do you make of these kind of comments? I mean, they're pretty much common sense. We've noticed this historically over console generations, right?
Right, absolutely. It seems like he's kind of going after the iPhone upgrade model that we kind of expect with phones these days. The Xbox One, it's true, hasn't really had a lot of great exclusives, a lot of multi-platform games for sure. And if you only have that console, you're not seeing a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak. And he's envisioning a future in which you basically tack on an upgrade to your Xbox One, and that's how you upgrade the system. No more revisions, no more Xbox 360 Slims, no more SKUs. It's hard for Microsoft to really justify building new boxes for people who are buying less and less consoles. The Xbox One isn't doing so hot right now. It makes sense for those games to appear on multiple platforms, including the Windows 10 store that they're trying to build up a lot of PR for, in my opinion, the wrong way.
Well, he's also said, Phil Spencer has also tweeted out to people who've been complaining about this thing where, you know, now we're seeing we're seeing less and less exclusives. And he's been saying, well, why would you be upset about the ability for more people to play the games that you enjoy? And you can kind of see it from both sides. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. People should be able to play their games wherever. It shouldn't. Console exclusives are such an old-fashioned way of thinking about gaming. At the same time, Microsoft is trying to position its box as the best box, and it really hasn't done a great job. In the beginning, the Xbox One is kind of positioned as this all-in-one media entertainment platform, and it really hasn't kind of panned out that way. I'm certain there are people out there who use it for the cable streaming features, for the One Guide and the Snap feature and Connect. And this is them shifting gears yet again. It makes sense for them to try to achieve parity with Windows 10 and Xbox One, and to try to get games to appear on both platforms without making it such a hassle for developers. But at the same time, they're kind of making trade-offs for the consumer, and I'm not really sure that's going to play out. You know, with the games that they're bringing to PC, Quantum Break, this game that we're going to talk about in a little bit, that's a spinoff of Forza 6. These games are coming to the Windows 10 store, and right now PC gaming is at a point where we don't really need another marketplace. And Microsoft is trying to have all its cake and eat it too. It's in a really weird spot, and by trying to position itself as a console where you upgrade it every year like you do an iPhone, by trying to position itself as you can buy the same games on Xbox One and PC and have the same experience, that's a really weird spot for a console developer to be at.
Yeah, I agree. And now we're going to start seeing this like corporate speak from Microsoft saying, oh, Windows 10 and Xbox One, it's the universal Windows platform. They keep touting this thing to developers saying, well, if you make your games for one platform, it's easily done for the other platform that we're having. And it's almost this kind of little bit of a monopoly happening where if other developers might be working on a PS4 exclusive and then maybe on down the line it's a time thing where they want to port it over to PC, it's not as easy to do it with that partner versus Microsoft. That's what they're really trying to tout here, I think. And so we're going to start hearing this universal Windows platform thing. And I think these are the kind of comments that are getting kind of a little bit of a backlash, which I have mixed feelings about this. And I understand what you're trying to say here. And the criticism I think is due, but he makes some valid points about the whole console space. We're seeing more and more and more games being available for PC. These consoles aren't powerful enough. People are complaining about frame rates, performance issues on this console generation, and instead looking at digital downloads on Steam. It's these kinds of moves that I think he's starting to look ahead in the future and saying, well, why is it worth it for Microsoft to spend all the research and development, all these millions of dollars on making a new console that is never going to match up to gamers' expectations when we could just as easily work on developing for the PC or just upgrading the Xbox One so we can improve things like the hard drive space, the RAM, the graphics. And I'm not sure if that's going to be possible with what kind of hardware they have out there right now. So it'll be interesting to see what we have in the future, but definitely some eyebrow-raising comments from Xbox head Phil Spencer about future Xbox One development for sure.
Well, while we're talking about Microsoft and Xbox, let's talk about news that's very recent. As of yesterday, Microsoft announced that Fable Legends has been canceled and the studio behind it, Lionhead Studios, may be closing. Let's read you a quick quote from Hanno Lemke, the general manager of Microsoft Studios Europe. After much consideration, we have decided to cease development on Fable Legends and are in discussions with employees about the proposed closure of Lionhead Studios in the UK. Additionally, we will close Press Play Studios in Denmark and sunset development on Project Knoxville. Unless it secures a new IP, Lionhead Studios is going to close, and the other studio mentioned there, Press Play Studios, is also going to close. They're the developers behind Max and the Curse, Brotherhood, and Kalimba. Yeah, famous developer. Taylor, what do you make of this news from Microsoft?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at it, quite honestly. I mean, the Fable franchise, for me, never met its full potential. It peaked at Fable 2, if I can even call it that. It got a lot of mixed reviews. I have mixed feelings about that game as well. Fable 3 was a big disappointment in my book. And I don't think anyone really wanted what Fable Legends was supposed to be. Didn't they also come out with like this failed Kinect game that was like this on-rail shooter? I'm not quite sure. But this Fable Legends was supposed to be like this hero-based brawler, if I recall correctly, not an actual RPG. And I'm assuming what happened at Microsoft Studios, they weren't satisfied with its progress. It might have been costing them a lot of money, and they were looking at the forecast and saying it's not worth it for us to close it out. What other explanation can there be, really? It's just weird to see this kind of thing after so long. I mean, this was announced a while ago, and I mean it's sad because when we're talking about Lionhead, of course, we're talking about Peter Molyneux, that famed developer. He had moved on a long time ago, but I mean, he's always in the news for one reason or another, really hyping up and doing a lot of PR for the Fable franchise. But it was a long time ago that Lionhead split from another developer, Bullfrog. And let's talk about the back catalog from both of those two companies put together. Theme Park, Black and White, Theme Hospital, Populous, Dungeon Keeper, and like we said before, Fable. That's a huge portfolio. It's sad to see that's we may never see some of these games revived.
Yeah, it's very sad, and I still believe in the promise of a Fable-like game. Basically, action RPGs kind of took the morality play that Fable was and kind of improved upon them. Games like Mass Effect really added to the formula, and Fable really never caught up. I would like Fable to be picked up by some other developer, maybe Peter Molyneux's new studio, 22 Cans, or maybe, coming to a Kickstarter near you. I think Fable still has some very promising ideas, a lot of cheeky British humor, and this is really kind of disappointing news. Let's pour one out for the developers at Lionhead Studios, and hopefully Microsoft has some planned to keep some of those developers in place.
Well, they said in the same blog post that they take care of their employees, and you want to believe them, right? That these developers, people that spent years working on the same project, that they're going to help them with career placement, either at Microsoft elsewhere, not at Microsoft Studios, because if they don't secure a new IP, it's definitely going to close. They didn't formally say we're shutting it down, but the writing is on the wall based on what they announced on their website. So yeah, our heart goes out to them. It's never good news when people get laid off and hear news all of a sudden like that. It's just it's a shame that it had to be all about Fable when we're criticizing some of those games, and we're really criticizing people's livelihoods on the same note. And that's not what we're talking about here. So our hearts definitely go out to them. All right, let's move on to we have such a heavy news show this week. Nintendo Direct that just happened on March 3rd last week, and all the games that were announced on there. And suspiciously, they left off the new Zelda Wii U title. So we're expecting maybe a Nintendo NX release along with the Wii U release as well. They didn't say anything about it, but let's talk about the other games announced. Paper Mario on Wii U, a new Monster Hunter, SNES on 3DS. There's a bunch of stuff. Let's run through this list. Metroid Prime Federation Force coming sometime this spring. This is a multiplayer shooter on the handheld in the same vein as Metroid Prime Hunters, but instead this is going to be a co-op experience, both campaign and with online multiplayer. Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix is coming sometime this year. They didn't give a definitive date. You excited for that one?
I am. I really like Rhythm Heaven. I know you're a huge fan of Rhythm Heaven. Very weird, wacky Japanese style rhythm game with kind of WarioWare style mechanics. Very neat, very cool soundtrack to that game. I'm glad it's coming to the West.
Yeah, and I know you're excited for this one, definitely. Another one coming to the West, Monster Hunter Generations, which was called Monster Hunter X in Japan, coming sometime this summer. Talk to me about that one.
Yes, this is the next sequel in the Monster Hunter franchise. I didn't think Final Fantasy Explorers really whet my Monster Hunter appetite all that much. And for this to be, Capcom has really hit it out of the park with the Monster Hunter games as of late on the 3DS. And I am so excited for this game coming this summer. I expect to pump in another 300 hours into this title.
Well, what do you mean by Final Fantasy Explorers specifically? Was it like Monster Hunter at all?
It was very similar to Monster Hunter. They had kind of Final Fantasy style trappings, of course, Final Fantasy summons and characters and spells, but it was the Monster Hunter gameplay without a lot of personality. It just felt like a very boring game. It didn't have a lot of the panache that the last Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate game did on 3DS. The connectivity wasn't as good. A lot of less people were playing it. It didn't have the same loot system that really made the latest Monster Hunter game that great. So I'm expecting a lot out of Monster Hunter Generations, and I hope it really takes that place, because Final Fantasy Explorers was a huge disappointment.
Gotcha. Okay, moving on to more 3DS releases. Hyrule Warriors Legends, which is actually a port of the Wii U version, but with all the DLC added into it. And it's getting also a season pass. I love this game because it's Dynasty Warriors plus Zelda, and to me that equals fun. So yeah, very excited to check that one out eventually. Paper Mario Color Splash coming later sometime this year. This is a Wii U game. I saw a lot of negative feedback about this because people are saying, man, they cannot get this franchise right. This series has kind of been in a lull for a while, wouldn't you say?
It's weird because Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, I think, is a really great game that has featured Paper Mario, but that's really more of a Mario & Luigi game. The Paper Mario franchise has really kind of taken a turn for the worse after Sticker Star, and Color Splash seems to be not what fans of Paper Mario really want. They really want the original game on the N64 or the Thousand Year Door sequel. Paper Mario was originally promised as the spiritual successor to Super Mario RPG, and it's really kind of turned out that Mario and Luigi has really kind of taken its lunch and become the true thing that Super Mario RPG was kind of really after. And that's really disappointing. I hope that Paper Mario Color Splash is a turnaround for this franchise. I think Paper Mario is a super neat idea, has super cute ideas, and can be really funny. So hopefully that game is good on the Wii U.
All right, moving on to yet another 3DS game, Kirby Planet Robobot. So this is being touted as like a Kirby game plus Gundam mechs. Essentially what you have is Kirby in robotic armor running around, and I'm very excited about this. And it even comes with a separate co-op mode called Team Kirby Clash, and it supports up to 4 players, and you take on these 4 different roles, and it's this boss rush style of gameplay. Very excited to check that out when that comes on June 10th, so a definitive date for that one at least.
What's the best Kirby game that you played that you most enjoyed recently?
Oh, recently, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think back, but it's probably Kirby Superstar Ultra on the DS, which was actually a re-release of the SNES Superstar game, which had the classic Kirby style gameplay, but it was so fun with all the little mini games, and that's really a hallmark of the franchise, what I love most about it. And yeah, I don't know, I haven't really checked out a lot more recent ones like that came out on Wii and the Wii U. So I've always thought that the handheld versions of all the Kirby games, like what was it, Mass Attack? What was that one called? Anyway, all those Kirby games have always been excellent on handheld. This one also, at the same time, Nintendo also announced that there's going to be a Kirby line of amiibo with Waddle Dee, King Dedede, also Meta Knight, and Kirby. And a lot of those, I mean, 3 of those 4 are already Smash amiibos. So they're just going to be just new styles and new poses of those characters, but hopefully with new functionality and obviously tied to the Planet Robobot coming this June. All right, let's move on to more amiibo news. Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge is coming out in April. So it's coming a month earlier if you buy an amiibo after March 25th from Amazon, Best Buy, or GameStop. So really, really interesting there. They're trying something new here where they're saying if you pre-order this game, you're getting it way earlier than everyone else.
This seems like a new way to get for amiibos to really justify their purchases. I think if you collect amiibos, you've been looking for something to justify it. I don't know that this game is really going to pan out for you. The Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, which is where Mini Mario really comes from, has had kind of ups and downs. And this is basically a free-to-play title that Nintendo's releasing as long as you buy the plastic figurine that comes with it. So if you're into that, go for it. But we'll see if the game's any good.
Right. This is a Wii U title that, like we said before, early access. But yeah, it just seems so weird that they're doing it this way. Yeah, I don't know. And this has been a long time coming. Star Fox, but this is actually a new entry into the series because we know about Star Fox Zero. That has been teased at E3, but Star Fox Guard is a new tower defense game coming to the Wii U alongside Star Fox Zero on April 22nd.
Right, it's a pack-in for Star Fox Zero, and if for some reason you don't buy the game, it'll be available standalone a few weeks after that. Very interesting. This is kind of Miyamoto's experiment with a tower defense that has been featured at E3 before, and they just turned it into a Star Fox product. You're going to be playing as Slippy and Slippy's uncle, which they showed in the Nintendo Direct. I didn't know that Slippy had more family members, but we'll see if Star Fox Zero and Star Fox Guard have any potential. And
also they announced that Star Fox Zero is going to get the retro R-Wing, so that low polygonal Star Fox shape that you remember from the SNES version is going to be an unlockable ship, a fighter in the new Star Fox Zero. So it's kind of a little bit of a throwback, and they stuck that in there at the end of their talk about Star Fox. Okay, let's move on to, again, more handheld news. A lot of handheld stuff packed into this Nintendo Direct. All the Super Nintendo games coming to the 3DS. Right now, 3 titles are already available. Pilot Wings, Super Mario World, and F-Zero. All those Super Nintendo classics. And then Nintendo's going to follow up with Super Mario Kart, Earthbound, Donkey Kong Country on March 24th. And then 3 more titles are going to be available on April 14th, which is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. So if you are not someone who goes out and downloads emulators, you can enjoy these games on your handy-dandy 3DS, legally, of course. You think Nintendo is going to get they're going to make some money off of this old stuff?
Absolutely. Nintendo has basically a business model of reselling you the same old games for about 30 years now. And, I really like some of these titles. I'm not sure that I really want to buy Super Mario Kart or Super Mario World, a fifth time. I bought those titles when they were available on Wii Virtual Console and on Wii U, and it just seems like Nintendo's really double dipping. I'm glad these games are available to a new audience. I'm glad that it's coming out for 3DS, a system that people seem to really enjoy. But man alive, this is Nintendo. Just what are they doing? They really need to open up more of their back catalog if they're going to continue doing stuff like this. Maybe get some of the more rare stuff. Earthbound is a nice surprise. I'd really like to see some games that they don't usually try and re-emulate.
I have a theory about this, and I think Nintendo is actually watching a lot of these speedrunners and Twitch streamers that play a lot of these classic games. And if you notice, there's sort of a pattern here. You're looking at Super Mario World, Earthbound, Donkey Kong Country, Super Metroid. These are pretty popular titles that are still streamed today and featured on a lot of events like, Summer Games Done Quick and stuff like that. So I have a theory that they're noticing the rising popularity and they're seeing lost revenue that they could be making off of their back catalog. For me personally, I wish they would just literally dump every title and say, here you go, here's the entire catalog, pay and download for whatever you want. I understand there's a lot that goes into maybe reprogramming, localizing, porting over, but it can't be that difficult with all the emulators out there. There's got to be smart minds at Nintendo that say, yeah, we need to make money off of this older stuff. Fans still want to play these things, even on modern consoles. Let's give it to them. So it's high time that they put out this stuff. So, but so be it. I mean, these are a lot of great classics that they've announced just recently last week. Well, if you're still with us through this long episode, let's pause for a minute. More news later, but let's say thanks to our sponsor, Audible. If you love books but find you never have time to read them like I do, well, Audible.com has the perfect solution. You can get audiobooks and listen to those books you've been meaning to read while you're on the go, at the gym, during your commute. Audible.com provides over 180,000 titles to choose from. The leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and of course, business information providers, if that's your bag. Their app is free and it works on your iPhone, iPad, Android, even Windows phones. You can also download and listen on your Kindle Fire and more than 500 MP3 players. The point is, Audible, it's everywhere you want it to be. And unlike a streaming or a rental service, with Audible, you own your books, so you can access your audiobooks anytime, anywhere, right from your smartphone or device of choice. Audible.com also has the Great Listen Guarantee. If you decide you don't like the book you choose, no problem. You can exchange any book you're not happy with another title anytime, no questions asked.
Yeah, one of the great books that's available on Audible is the Console Wars, Sega, Nintendo, and the Battle That Defined a Generation. That book is now being adapted to a movie due later this year, and maybe you want to find out if the book is better than the movie, which is better than real life. It's basically a retelling of the 1990s gaming era when Nintendo had a virtual monopoly in the video games market, and how Sega stole their crown, going from scrappy underdog to number one in the industry. I definitely recommend you check that out on Audible. And Taylor, how can people do that?
Well, I'll tell you. It's audible.com. For our listeners, they're offering a free 30-day trial membership and a free audiobook download at audible.com/1pvs2p today. Again, that's audible.com/1pvs2p to start your free trial. Show your support for our podcast with a free 30-day trial and get your free, that's right, it's truly free, trust me, I've done it myself, audiobook download at audible.com/1pvs2p. Thanks very much to Audible for supporting our show.
And thanks to you, the listener, for supporting us.
Now on to new releases for this week.
I love new releases.
Microsoft unexpectedly just launched Gears of War Ultimate Edition for PC, which was already out on Xbox One for a while. And this one is kind of a weird thing because there's some performance issues, naturally, like with any PC game, I guess, nowadays. But Epic's co-founder went out and just came out and really criticized Microsoft for saying that they're really plotting to monopolize the game making on Windows 10, like we talked about at the top of the show, between Xbox games and Windows 10. So, and it starts with the Ultimate Edition for PC. And maybe that's why we saw that it was like surprise launch. Like, here it is. There you go. Totally unannounced. Very unexpected.
It's surprising because Gears of War Ultimate Edition on Xbox One already had performance issues, and they basically translated them to this PC version. And this is not the kind of game that you want for this new platform that Microsoft is trying to build. And having the developer of the game criticize the very thing that they're trying to promote is just a bad look for Microsoft. And I don't know how they're going to get out of this hole with developers and with PC gamers, because honestly, the Windows 10 store is another marketplace that very crowded already on the PC.
Yeah, super bad PR. All right, let's move on to Tom Clancy's The Division. It's gotten a lot of marketing behind it lately. PS4, Xbox One, and PC out for $60, but you can also buy the Gold Edition, and that's also available downloadable as well. And that one is $100. And the difference is that I believe that Gold Edition includes the Season Pass for future DLC, and I think a few Day One extras as well. Ryan, I know you've mentioned that you want our group to get into this game. What do you think?
The Division promises to be a third-person Destiny-like, because that's now a genre, apparently. Basically a shooter with loot mechanics, based in a kind of realistic setting. I think people who have been kind of falling off the Call of Duty bandwagon are kind of going to games like this, games a lot like in the Diablo style. And the Division promises to be one of those. The game is coming out this week. I'm kind of waiting for reviews to see if we'll all go in on it. I hope, unlike Destiny, that it actually has good hooks in it and that it has a lot of good end game content. We'll see where it goes from here. The DLC is going to be console exclusive for about a month on Xbox platforms first. So if you're a PS4 player or a PC player, you're gonna have to wait about a month to get the DLC after the Microsoft people do.
Yeah, the interesting hook, of course, that they've been touting all along is that if you're playing online with a bunch of random players, of course you're cooperating as you're moving on through the campaign. But then at the end, you're waiting for like this helicopter to extract you, and then all of a sudden your communications go silent, and then all of a sudden your squad mates can betray you and steal all the loot that you earned in that mission. But of course, it goes both ways. You can also do the same to your teammates and then steal their loot. So a very interesting premise. Of course, you don't even have to engage in that if you don't want to be a dick. You can just totally like all cooperate and agree not to do it in advance. So when the chat cuts out, when the voice chat cuts out, you can just go on your merry way. Moving on to Hitman, this is very interesting lately because they had a lot of pivoting about this game and how it's going to be released. But it's available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC this week. It's going to be released in an episodic format. Ryan, why don't you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, basically this is the next entry in the Hitman series. Of course, you play as Agent 47, trying to disguise yourself and killing marked targets in different ways. There was a beta over this past weekend on PS4 to PS Plus members, and the beta served as kind of a prequel to the series. However, Square Enix has said that the main game will take place after the events of the last Hitman game, Hitman Absolution. I really like the Hitman series. It has kind of a penchant for random chaos, and when things kind of go south and people have figured out that you've killed your target and you try to get away. It's a really interesting idea for a game, and it can be really fun, but Hitman fans have been kind of waiting for a good game in this series since Hitman Blood Money, and they're still waiting, and it's weird that it's coming out in this episodic format. This game is going to come out for $15, and then additional episodes are going to come out for another $15 a pop. So this is a new business model that Square Enix is trying to promote and trying to go down, and seemingly all their games in the future are going down this road. Of course, Final Fantasy VII, the remake of that, is also going to have this episodic format. So if it's a hit with Hitman, maybe it'll be hit for other future Square Enix titles.
Do you think eventually, and I'm not sure if they've already announced this, so forgive me if that news is already out there, but do you think eventually they're going to bundle all these episodes and say, oh, here it is in a retail copy? Because I feel like there's still a market for these kinds of games when put out on retail.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what they did with Life is Strange, right? Life is Strange had a season pass. You could buy episode 1, and then the other episodes were available for purchase, a month or two after the first episode. And this seems to be the kind of way of development for some developers these days. And Square Enix, with much smaller teams, is trying to go after this. And it worked with Life is Strange. It worked for Telltale's The Walking Dead. We'll see if it works with Hitman.
All right. And another one coming out this week. This is technically, I don't know if you can consider this a new release. We've known about it for a while, but it's downloadable content. It's the extension of an existing game, Fire Emblem Fates Revelation for 3DS. And if you've been following all along, pay attention because it still kind of doesn't make sense to me how they did it this way. But Fire Emblem Fates was released in 3 versions, just to recap. Each one of them has a different storyline, but they've all got the same characters. So there were 3 versions. There's Birthright, Conquest, and those 2 were physical releases on the 3DS. And then there's this Revelation out this week as DLC. So essentially you could buy Birthright and Conquest for $40 as your starting path. And then the gameplay actually varied between the 2 very slightly. There's a little bit of a change between the 2. But this Revelation is going to be available at a discounted price of $20. Again, if you're still with me about this, for example, if you bought Birthright and beat that, and you paid $40, you could then download Conquest for $20, and then you can also download Revelation for $20. Does that make sense? Like, basically, all in all, to play all 3 of these games, it's going to be $80. And also, Nintendo bundled all those together in a special edition for $80, way back when. But those have been sold out for quite a while. So very weird format. I have no idea why they did it this way. Do you?
I'm currently playing through Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, and for the most part, I can see where they're going with this. It's a Fire Emblem game, and essentially we're getting 3 Fire Emblem games. They have very similar story beats. Conquest is kind of the more traditional Fire Emblem experience. Birthright is a little bit easier for newcomers, and Revelation is kind of the true ending of sorts. Really weird thing for Nintendo to do. Of course, other games have experimented with selling you the true ending as DLC. Think Azura's Wrath on 360 and PS3 back in the last generation. And this is just a weird path for Fire Emblem to go down. And if you like strategy games like I do, this is great for you. But just a really weird business model. I really would have preferred to have all 3 games on one cartridge in the special edition, but Nintendo just really constrained their supply, and so I had to buy one game, buy the other path as DLC, and buy this third path again as DLC this week. So
what's incredible is that I've heard that the first week of sales has way surpassed the last Fire Emblem game. So I guess it's becoming a much, much more popular series lately. Yeah, I mean, Fire Emblem Awakening on 3DS I thought was a huge hit and really revived that series here in the West, because the past Fire Emblem games, they just didn't make a lot of copies here. They're very popular in Japan. And to hear that Birthright and Conquest have done so well lately for the 3DS is a good sign for that series. But yeah, like we've said, really strange they did it this way for sure. And last but not least, technically this isn't a new release this week, but we didn't talk about it last week. This actually came out last Friday. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD. So this is a re-release of that Wii and GameCube game, actually. So this one's available on the Wii U for $50. But there's also a separate one. You can also buy Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD with a Wolf Link amiibo for $60. And what that gets you is the new amiibo allows you to unlock a new exclusive dungeon called Cave of Shadows. So that's what that does. But also, in the HD re-release, there's a new hero mode, so your damage is doubled, and it's available right from the start. You don't need to beat it to unlock this mode. And what's more is that you'll be able to switch from the hero mode to normal mode at any time. They've made a lot of gameplay tweaks to this from what I've heard lately from the reviews coming for this game. And they've really, I think, eliminated a lot of the things that people had complained about it when it was originally released. Like a lot of the monotony that came from the first couple of hours of that game, doing these little fetch quests and little annoying side stuff that you had to do to get out of the starting area. So I'm definitely excited to check it out because I never played through it the first time around. Did you?
I did not. I was not thirsty for a re-release of Twilight Princess, and it seems like there's a kind of a bit of an appetite for it. I thought the Zelda re-release that we really wanted was Wind Waker, and of course Nintendo did that. And I'm not sure who was asking for a re-release of Twilight Princess. Taylor, can you answer me quickly? Is Twilight Princess, do you think that's worth revisiting?
I don't know because I haven't played it yet. I'm certainly curious about it because, like I said, I missed it before, but I'm waiting for A Link to the Past to be remade. And, well, like you said before, Wind Waker was the one HD game that you thought people wanted. But let's be real here. Ocarina of Time, that sold like gangbusters on 3DS. And same thing with Majora's Mask. So they're really kind of going through the Zelda series and putting out HD versions of them. I'm very excited about that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did it with Skyward Sword also. That came out very late in the in the Wii life cycle. And I wouldn't be surprised if that one's up next. But I really, really want A Link to the Past. That, I think, in a lot of Zelda fans' minds, that's the true best game in the entire series.
All right, this episode is going on way too long. Let's move on quickly to some game announcements this week.
Here comes a new challenger!
Forza's newest game is free to play and Windows 10 only. It's being called Forza Motorsport 6 Apex. It's going to be launched on the Windows 10 store this spring. It's supposed to include a subset of the modes, cars, and tracks that were available in Forza 6 originally on Xbox One. No word yet on what the microtransactions will be, but there won't be racing wheel support at launch, which seems to be what fans of Forza really are after. They're also said to be working on cross-platform multiplayer with the Xbox One version. Knights and Bikes, an action RPG from the people behind Tearaway and Ratchet & Clank, also just got kickstarted for PC, Mac, and PS4. This game is said to be inspired by Earthbound and the NES classic The Goonies, and the game is hoping to capture the weird adventures of adolescence. Kind of looks like a step above Double Fine's Costume Quest. Really, really neat looking game. I hope it comes out, and I hope it's a good game.
Yeah, I encourage people to go check that out, and we'll post a link to that successful Kickstarter page in our show notes.
All right, let's talk quickly about something we teased at the top of the show. Microsoft's HoloLens. News about that is finally coming out. It's being offered at $3,000 for a development kit on March 30th, and that's coming with 3 titles. One is called Young Conquer, another game called Fragments. Fragments appears to be a detective simulator. Young Conquer is a tech demo featuring a weird, shrunken version of Conquer the Squirrel, Rare's formerly foul-mouthed animal mascot, if you remember him. Walking through wherever your VR setup. Remember that HoloLens is Microsoft's augmented reality VR play. Very interesting premise. The Oculus Rift's first development kit, the DK1, was offered at a tenth of this price, $300. So at $3,000, Microsoft is really asking for consumers and developers to really go out on a limb and hope that the AR as opposed to VR is really worth paying that money for.
Yikes. I don't know. It will be dead on day one if it's $3,000 or higher. Can you imagine? This is only going to be for like the tech geeks and developers out there and not for the general consumer. I don't know. That to me is the most shocking news about this. But this Young Conquer demo, if you look at the video of this, again, we'll put a link to that in the show notes, is really impressive because it works in your environment. So basically you notice the character, like it's a platformer. So he's running on your walls. He's jumping on your couch. If he detects that he's along the edge of like a piece of furniture you have in the room, he'll actually like act as if he's about to fall off. Like that's a really, really interesting concept to me. So definitely different from VR. You know, it's using the existing space in your room to give you a sense of space to play around in. So it's tailor-made to whatever your setup is, wherever you are playing, which I think is really, 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 really cool.
While we're talking about building a VR space or your VR dungeon, if you prefer, this is kind of a little bit of old news, but we didn't talk about it yet on the show. HTC's Vive is also coming out. Pre-orders began February 29th. That headset is currently priced at $799 for a pre-order. That's coming with the headset, 2 wireless controllers, wall-mounted movement sensors, and 2 games, Job Simulator and Fantastic Contraption. It's also going to be able to pair with phones to answer calls, respond to texts, and check notifications. And the specs are only slightly below the Oculus Rift's Here are the quick specs for the HTC Vive. You're going to need a NVIDIA 970 or a Radeon 290 equivalent or greater, an Intel i5 processor, 4 gigs of RAM, an HDMI port, and one USB port as opposed to Oculus Rift's 3+1 USB ports that you'll need. And you'll also be able to run the HTC Vive on Windows 7 or anything newer, of course.
And of course, if you wanted to hear more about the Oculus Rift, and that's coming in at $599, so a little bit less, but it's not as fully featured as the HTC Vive. So there's kind of a market for both of these headsets, and they're both challenging each other. They're of course direct competitors. But if you haven't read Ryan's great editorial piece about the whole Oculus Rift announcement, you can go back and listen to episode 34 or check our site, 1pvs2p.com, and read that piece about how the Oculus Rift might be able to perform, is going to meet our expectations, or will it not? I mean, really. And so it's interesting to see now that a lot of this stuff is now starting to come to fruition. We're starting to get release dates now, pre-orders are available, and now we're seeing the specs required to run these devices. I can't wait to see what's going to come next. Like, now we're really kind of waiting for Sony to come out with their VR headset, their solution, their companion to the PS4. And that might be the winner of all of these, pretty much, because you already have PS4s in a lot of living rooms. And with these PCs for the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, and we're assuming with the Microsoft HoloLens, a lot of consumer grade PCs just aren't ready. They're not. It's very expensive for you to build that kind of spec to just meet the minimum bare requirements to run these things. Well, that was a lot of show. Let's get down to the home stretch. Ryan, you ready for the bonus stage?
Yeah, let's do it.
A McDonald's in Sweden is currently testing a cardboard VR headset that comes with Happy Meals to pair with smartphones. Maybe they're going to bring it to the US if VR is a hit with the kids?
The headline for this was, would you like the stench of fry grease with your VR? I'd have to agree with that.
David Giltonen, the editor-in-chief of Retro Magazine, which is, of course, owned by a Retro VGS co-founder, quit the Coleco Chameleon project after the project faced allegations that the prototype unit it was showing off was, in fact, a Super Nintendo Junior duct taped inside an old Atari Jaguar chassis.
Man, I don't know who to believe anymore. At this point, who really wants to play a new ColecoVision? Ugh, this whole thing was such a crapshoot. Even John Boyega wants a single-player campaign for Star Wars Battlefront. Boyega, who played Stormtrooper Finn in Star Wars The Force Awakens, tweeted to EA asking for a single-player campaign in Battlefront, even asking if he could visit their UK office to discuss the possibility.
This guy can ascend to nerd god status if he gets this thing done. Can you imagine this guy's acting in a Star Wars movie and he's campaigning for a video game? Man, that's awesome. I love when people like that do this kind of thing on Twitter especially. All right, that's finally it. If you liked our show, please subscribe and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. It would be a huge help if you could take the 5 minutes to do so. Please let us know what you think. Give us some constructive feedback on our show. All of our episodes can also be heard on our site, 1pvs2p.com.
You can also listen and subscribe with your favorite podcast app with our site's RSS feed, or honestly, with almost any podcast app that's available out there. All of our sources for this week's stories have been posted at the link in the show notes.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/1pvs2p. You can also follow us on Twitter. We're super active there at 1pvs2p_podcast. We want to thank Phonetic Hero, as always, for the use of his songs for our show, Coffee Stomp and Super Manly Brothers X. Both of those songs are part of the compilation project Chip Tunes Equals Win. Thanks so much for listening. See you guys next week.